I'd like to highlight that Facebook's Libra does have a major voice of support in Congress. South Dakota Senator Mike Rounds sent a letter to Libra Association member Anchorage Trust Company, noting Libra is a necessary innovation that will allow U.S. tech companies to compete with the likes of those in China. And Senator Rounds joins us now from Capitol Hill for more on this. Senator Rounds, thanks so much for taking the time. I want to dive deeper into your views here because you weren't just supportive of Facebook being an innovative company. You're also out there telling a Libra Association member to keep up the charge here. So why are you so enthused by this project continuing here?
I don't think cryptocurrency is going to go away. I think it's a wave that's here. I think the rest of the world is way ahead of the United States. I'd like to have appropriate regulation that doesn't stifle it, but rather promotes it, but also appropriately lays out the guidelines for how it should grow in the United States and elsewhere around the world. I think right now, if you take a look at where China's at, where the entire continent of Africa is at with regard to mobile payments, you find that it is something in which other countries are kind of skipping to a new technology in which transactions are being handled, point of sale and so forth, back and forth by phones. Mm-hmm. And they're using cryptocurrency technology. What we'd like to see happen in the United States is regulatory process set up that doesn't stop it, but rather allows it to continue to grow. The efficiencies found in cryptocurrencies are such that for very small transactions and point of sale transactions, it's very inexpensive compared to what it might be otherwise. And so I just don't think that the rest of the world should continue on this path, and with the United States and our consumers here not being able to benefit from those less expensive ways of doing business.
Sure. Well, Senator, I mean, that was a piece of the question we heard today. Of course, Zuckerberg was also asked how he's aiming to make Libra a currency that works, not, as you said, across the globe, not just here in the U.S. Want to play what he said?
From a U.S. regulatory perspective, it would probably be significantly simpler. But because we're trying to build something that can also be a global payment system that works in other places, it may be less welcome in other places if it's only 100% based on the dollar.
So with that in mind, I mean, how important to you is it that the basket of currencies that is pegged to Libra here, when we're talking about it, how much of that needs to be influenced by the dollar, or is that not necessarily important in your mind?
No, I think it is important. And if we simply don't have the right regulatory environment in the United States, the probability of the dollar being used in that basket becomes, a smaller percentage. And what I want to see is the dollar remain a very strong international rate of exchange and so forth. But if we don't upgrade our regulatory environment here, and if we don't continue to allow for these really innovative ways of transacting business, then somebody else is going to fill that void. And that's what we don't want to have happen. Look, we need protections built in. We need protections for consumers. We need to be able to regulate the processes, but it has to be in such a fashion that it allows this industry to grow and to continue to find more efficient ways of delivering that service. Mm-hmm. And that's really what this is all about. When you're talking about consumers, you want those consumers to benefit from this very innovative approach. But they also want to make sure they have a regulatory environment that protects them as well. And that's a fine line, but based on the regulatory environment today that we have, we're really looking at a 1933 law. You think about that 75 years ago to talk about things that we're using today to transact financial services. Mm-hmm. We need to upgrade it. And we shouldn't do it by being afraid of it. We should recognize that it's going to be here. And then we should talk about what our needs are in the regulatory environment and what will actually help it to grow and prosper, but in such a fashion that consumers are protected. And that's really what we're saying is let's not walk away from this. Let's not bury our head in the sand. Let's get ahead of this thing here, and let's try to capture as much of that opportunity within the United States as possible. Mm-hmm.
And in speaking about the need for Libra, Mark Zuckerberg had said that there are more than 1 billion people around the world who may not have bank accounts. But a congressman who was actually questioning Mark Zuckerberg said, you know what, those people who are underbanked, all they need is a dollar or a peso. This Libra project is not necessarily going to help them. He believes that it's actually going to help criminals and drug dealers. So do you think Mark Zuckerberg did enough to convince regulators that the Libra cryptocurrency project would be for those with legitimate intentions, good intentions, and not criminals?
I didn't have an opportunity to see Mr. Zuckerberg's testimony, so I can't answer that part. But I would say that part of the question there, or the concern there about drug dealers and illicit activity, is a valid concern. And that's the reason why we do have to upgrade our regulatory environment. And we're actually doing that with the Illicit Cash Act right now, which is in the United States Senate today. Those need to be upgraded regardless of whether or not Libra is embraced by the rest of the world. But remember, even in the United States today, 6.5% of all the people that are out there don't have a bank account today. And 18%, well, almost 19% of the people in the United States are underbanked, underserved. This is an opportunity to bring them back around and to give them a service that today they don't have.
What's interesting, though, Senator, is even by Mark Zuckerberg's own admission, he kind of admits that, maybe it's a need out there, but maybe Facebook right now, he understands, is not the best company that should be leading the charge. And you can talk about alternatives here, right, to solve all the problems we've just discussed. It doesn't necessarily need to be Facebook's Libra. People have also talked about the U.S. perhaps making its own digital currency as well. Are there other alternatives out there? Because it's rare to find someone in your position that is actually pro the idea of solving it and having Libra be the solution. Are there other solutions out there that might also solve the same problems that's not Libra?
No question, but that it's the concept that we're trying to endorse. Libra is an example. We have a business in South Dakota because South Dakota's banking organizations, the regulatory environment in South Dakota is such that they said, look, this is innovative, it's new, we're going to find a way to actually put something together so they can establish the domicile in South Dakota. But the reason why what we're talking about is not trying to identify and pick a winner or a loser. What we're saying is the concept of this cryptocurrency is for real and it's not going to go away. And simply by having the United States behind the rest of the world doesn't necessarily work to our advantage because China is going to do it. They're going to roll out their own cryptocurrency. And do we want to see people in the rest of the world looking at China's cryptocurrency versus what we might very well have in a better regulatory environment be a part of here and with the rest of the international community? So it's not that we're trying to say there's only one winner in this. What we're saying is Libra deserves an opportunity to sell their case, and we should not try to throw cold water on it because just because we throw cold water on one organization doesn't mean that it's going to go away.
Got it.
So rather than doing that, let's recognize that this is a new technology and let's try to find the best way to regulate and to offer encouragement for this innovation that clearly would provide a less expensive and easier approach for transactions, not only in small transactions like you find right now that are going on already in Africa, but in international transactions as well.
Senator Brown, Dan Howley here. A lot is being made of China having its own cryptocurrency or potentially working on its cryptocurrency and how Libra could be the U.S. getting ahead of that. But the organization is going to be based out of Geneva. So is it really the U.S. getting a hold of this and getting ahead of China if the organization itself isn't even based in the U.S.?
We actually had a discussion with some of the folks from Libra about that. What they wanted to make sure is that if they did open this up, that the United States would feel comfortable with it, but also other organizations around the free world would also feel comfortable with it. We'd love to have it here. Other states, other nations are wondering whether or not it would be better based in a place like Geneva as opposed to one of our trading centers. They wanted it based in a trading center that's recognized internationally. We would love to have it based right here in one of the trading centers in the United States. There may very well be another one that comes along that competes with Libra. We're hoping that there are multiple opportunities. The Federal Reserve right now has actually talked about doing their own type of a transaction. But in all cases, we still have to have a regulatory environment that allows for this type of innovation and that recognizes just the threats to consumers and the ability for law enforcement to interact and for regulators to be able to regulate. But it's also got to be innovative enough to where they feel welcome and that there will be an innovation that actually saves money and provides more service for consumers. It's a fine line you walk, but walking away from it or saying that we don't want anything to do with it doesn't mean it's going to go away. What is going to happen is it's going to simply exist, but it will be outside of our purview and thus more difficult to regulate and to be able to monitor.
Yeah, I mean, it's unclear if the hearing today will make Mark Zuckerberg want to walk away from it any more than he did going into it. But Senator, last question for you in terms of addressing all of those problems we talked about, and indeed the change to the way that regulators look at this as well. You're talking about a security law being applied to cryptocurrencies, and obviously the SEC has evolved in looking at Bitcoin, saying it's not a security anymore. Why not just stick with Bitcoin being the standard? What is the problem with just saying, all right, we've already got one out there that seems to be working well, we've changed our views on how we're going to regulate it. Why not just stick with the established cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin?
I don't think we need to have, I don't think we should be picking a winner or a loser. And I've made that pretty clear to the folks in Libra as well. I'm not saying that they're the chosen one. What I'm saying is they need to innovate. If other companies come and they want to try to compete with Libra, more power to them, bring them in. But what I want is an environment in the United States that actually encourages this type of innovation and development. Look, the reason why we're where we're at today is because we encourage innovation. We award patents, we award copyrights, we protect that intellectual property that these individuals have done. And in doing so, the rest of the world looks at the United States and wonders why we're successful economically. It's because we have told these folks, look, this is a place where you can come, this is a place where you can innovate, this is a place where we want people to be able to make a profit and to reinvest it again. Let's not lose that when it comes to the digital age and to the cryptocurrencies that may very well be out there. It would be marvelous if we had multiple types of cryptocurrencies available that were appropriately regulated, a fair playing field, and they could compete for the consumer's business. I want all that 18% of the people that are underserved in the United States right now to have access to one of these to where it's less expensive for them to actually be able to join and to be able to share the assets that they've got back and forth and to be paid appropriately without having additional costs incurred. This is an innovative approach. More than one will come in, but most certainly we shouldn't let it be created and innovated just in other parts of the world. We should play a part in that.
All right, Senator Mike Round, sharing your thoughts. Appreciate you taking the time to chat with us, sir. And thank you again.
Thank you.
Hey investors, Zach Guzman here. Are you interested in learning more about the markets and getting the latest financial news? Well, then click right here to subscribe to our Yahoo Finance YouTube channel. Get the latest up-to-the-minute market analysis, big interviews in the world of finance, and information on how to manage your money every day wherever you are.